Ozonics Killerwinds podcast back again. Back at it. What are we talking about today?
We're going to talk about a couple different ways that you can use Ozonics. You know, because a lot of people think that it might be something that's just for up in a tree, but it's not. It's more than that.
We get that a lot. We get that a ton, especially at the consumer shows. Mm-hmm. You'll get a guy that'll walk up every once in a while that's an elk hunter or a western hunter, and he just doesn't get it. He doesn't see the value in it.
Yeah.
It's like, well, and it's funny because I've told this story many times. That was my first experience with Ozonics. I told Scott that flat out. I guided him on an elk hunt. And I said, listen, Scott, it works on an elk, works on a deer. It's not going to work on an elk.
Yeah, exactly.
Bigger eyes, bigger ears, bigger nose. It's just different. Yep. They're just not whitetails.
Yeah.
And wow, was I wrong.
Exactly.
So yeah, like you said, and I say this, I'm not trying to say this in a braggadocious way. I don't even know if that's a word. Braggadocious, supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. I'm not saying this in a braggadocious way. I'm just saying it. I have had an opportunity to hunt a lot of different animals with an Ozonics over the years.
Right.
From whitetails to mule deer to elk to black bear to coyotes to wolves to, fox, bobcats, pigs in a bunch of different states.
Yeah.
Whitetails in a bunch of different states. I've really been able to see it work.
Yeah. Well, and
what?
Give me one thing that all those things have in common.
They all have eyes.
No.
They have ears.
Stop. I mean, that's true, but no, they all it's an animal.
Well, it's an animal, and
they're going to use their nose to their advantage.
Well, two things I think. One, they all have noses, and two, they all do the same thing when they hear or see something. Instinctively, they circle on the downwind side.
Exactly.
They circle on the downwind side. Whitetails, circle. Elk, circle on the downwind.
Yeah.
Predators, circle on the downwind.
Yep.
I mean, it's just what they do.
Yeah.
Eyes play tricks. Ears might fool them. Nose doesn't lie.
Yeah, exactly.
They're going to circle on the downwind side.
Yep.
So let's just dive right in. What do you want to talk about first? Shoot them at me. This rapid fire.
I think let's talk a little bit about how to do it, like in a Western setting. What type of things can you use?
Yeah. Well, even before we're talking about the things you use, let's talk about understanding the fundamentals of ozonics, right?
Yeah.
Ozone is a very unstable molecule. We're trying to manipulate that instability.
Yep.
Trying to create a situation where that ozone comes in contact with your odor.
Yeah.
That's the gist of it.
Yep.
Right? If you had ozone in a test tube, let's say it was a couple feet tall, foot wide of air, and let's just say that's pure air, zero humidity, zero moisture, zero particulate, it's just oxygen, just O2. The half-life of ozone is 20 minutes in that pure state of just in the presence of just oxygen.
Yeah.
Now, you think about in Iowa, and this is all going to come together in a second. In Iowa, in the Midwest, it's humid here. Yeah. Not humid like Texas humid, but we have cold, damp days. When you're hunting in the fall, everybody's like, man, if they're not from the Midwest, and they come to the Midwest, like, man, that wind just bites.
Yeah.
It's not the wind as much as biting you, it's the moisture in the air.
Right.
That's what cuts right through you.
Yep.
Do you follow me?
Yep.
So you think about when you hunt in Iowa with an Ozonics and it's a 20-degree day and it's a 60% humidity, right? It's just a drizzly, wet, just cold day. Mm-hmm. There's just that much more stuff in the air that ozone can oxidize on.
Right.
You follow me? Ozone doesn't discriminate. That's the other fundamental thing we know. It's going to oxidize on whatever it comes in contact with.
Yeah.
So getting back to the whole Western thing, a lot of Western guys look at Ozonics, I'm like, well, it doesn't apply to me. That doesn't apply to me. I don't sit in a tree stand. I'm spotting and stalking, I'm moving around. Yeah, you're absolutely right. But before we even talk about how you can use it, you need to understand that in a Western state, it can be even more effective because it's so dry.
Yep.
I can't tell you how many buddies that I know that are outfitters, guides out West that have bought into the idea of what Ozonics can do. I saw it for myself, and it works even that much better because there's less moisture in the air. Yeah. There's just that much less that ozone can oxidize on and more to oxidize on your
scent and odor.
Your odor.
Yeah. When
we hear guys that walk up at the show and they have hunted with it out west and they have hunted in the Midwest, they're like, man, dude, it's crazy how good it works out there. And that's part of the reason why it's just so dry.
Yeah.
But again, the other hurdle that we always have to get across to people is, well, I'm not a tree stand hunter. I'm a spot and stalk guy. That's totally fine.
Yeah.
Ozone can go wherever you are going.
Yeah.
Heck, dude, when I first started hanging with it, I used to just take like baling wire.
Yeah.
When I first met Scott, this is before the Kinetic Pack, he came out with gear ties, these rubber wire ties, just tied them on our backpacks.
Right.
You follow me? Just figure out a way to run it all the time. A great option as well is to use the Ozonics Kinetic Pack.
Yep.
It's a fanny pack style bag with a holder in the top of it that your Ozonics can fit right in. So wherever you're moving, wherever you're going, that unit is exhausting ozone out of the top of that backpack, and it's helping eliminate your odor.
Yeah. And the reason that it works in the pack is because it actually opens up and it allows the fan and everything to the oxygen can get to it because
you're not restricting the airflow,
exactly,
right? Because like a lot of guys will try to put it on their backpack or something, and they just put it with a fan. Like we've got an Ozonics HR500 sitting here. They have it so let's say this is my back. They just stick the Ozonics like this and they block the fan.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to make sure that you make sure that fan is facing out.
Yeah,
that's the idea behind the Kinetic Pack. Is it doesn't block it doesn't block the airflow at all. And like we talked about earlier, it doesn't matter. When an elk comes in and when you start getting out there in September and you're trying to call them in, they are going to circle.
Yeah.
I can't say how often I've called at a bull and then will call and then move.
Yeah.
Because I know when I call, if this is the downwind side, he's going to try to circle on the downwind side. So to try to position ourselves to get a broadside shot when he comes around.
Yeah, exactly.
But inevitably, man, the other big thing about the Western states that is very much like the Midwest is the wind switches. Man, it swirls. It just doesn't do what you think it's going to do.
Yeah.
We talk about elk coming in and circling downwind. The other big thing about it is the thermals play such a huge role, right?
Yeah.
In the Midwest, in the flatter country of the Midwest, we all hunt off of prevailing wind. You get into Wisconsin, you get along Iowa, you get along these rivers, you get in the bluff country in the Midwest. You get in Pennsylvania, in the mountains of Pennsylvania, West Virginia, all of a sudden you're hunting thermals.
Yeah.
Thermals that are going down at night and then go up during the day.
Right.
Well, inevitably, you're out there when those thermals are switching.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? If they're not going like this and they're not going like this, what are they doing?
Yeah.
Just looks like I'm doing the Macarena. They're going every which way. They're not going where you want them to go.
Yeah.
That's Western hunting. You're hunting thermals. You're trying to get above or below, depending on what time of day, or you're here, you want to get over to there. Well, the thermals are going to switch by the time I get over there, so I need to try to get on their level and drop below or drop above. Well, guess what? The elk do that all instinctively. They don't have to sit there and think about it. They just know where to go.
Yeah, they just do it.
You follow me?
Yep.
And so that's where an Ozonics can become such a valuable tool.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say about Western hunting, whether it's, like I said, we're talking specifically about elk hunting right now, but it could be mule deer hunting. It could be black bear hunting. Man, last time I checked, you don't just, do your old genie in the bottle and zap, you go from here to there. You got to walk.
Yeah, exactly.
You got to hike.
Yep.
Dude, I'm sweating just sitting here.
Me too, actually.
Yeah, dude. Like my ears are on fire. If I take this headphones off, it's like my ears are like, I can feel them. They're like bright red. But my point is that guess what? You sweat.
Yeah.
And you can do all this passive scent control all day long. But the minute you start walking and moving, you're emitting odor, we're breathing constantly. It just doesn't ever stop.
Yeah.
And so that's the idea is when you are sweating, you are active and you're out there, especially in Western states where you're having to go up and down. Biggest hill in Iowa is an overpass, right?
Yeah.
So we get kind of lucky here. But there it's just not like that.
Yeah, exactly.
And so whether it's an animal circling on the downwind side, whether you're dealing with thermals or you're just dealing with the odor that comes along with the fact that you're just going to have to do a lot of hiking, that's where an Ozonics can really come in handy.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where, too, don't think that, like, the Kinetic Pack is just for Western states. I mean, that could be a huge piece of the puzzle for you getting in and out in the Midwestern states, too,
Oh, man. Well, I'll tell you what, if there's one thing that I think that I hear over and over and over across the spectrum of Ozonics users, But for whatever reason, specifically on the hardcore men and women that really have got it figured out, I always tell this story. I won't say where I was. I was at an event, all these people in the room. Who hunts with Ozonics? Raise your hand. Everybody raise their hand. Who uses it in the tree stand? Raise your hand. Keep your hands up. They all keep their hands up. Who uses it on the way in and out from their tree stand? Keep your hands up. They all put their hands down.
Yeah.
Except for a couple people.
Yeah.
We were at Wisconsin.
Yeah, same thing.
The Wisconsin show this year, we had an opportunity to do seminars. I asked the same question. There was 2 guys sitting right in the front that were hardcore. They walked up before the thing like, hey, man, we heard about the seminar on the radio. We're here. I want you to try to teach me something. I love this stuff. I'm like, right away, I'm like, okay, no problem, man. Like, we'll get into it. And I went through that scenario. And guess what? They both put their hands down.
Yeah.
He walked up to me afterwards. He goes, you know what? I never even thought about that.
Yeah.
We talk about odor like a river, and the Ozonics is the dam.
Yeah.
If you put that dam down, you block the water. But the minute you lift that dam up and you let the water through, you're not putting the water back.
No, it's done.
You follow
Gone.
me? So whether it's a Western state or if you're hunting in the Midwest, whether you're hunting elk or bear or mule deer, or if not like you're just hunting whitetails or you're hunting whitetails,
Yeah.
the reality is that you have to get in and out to where you're going.
Yeah.
And you can help eliminate your odor from the minute you leave your truck to the minute you get back. You know, I always talk about, well, I have a bottle right here. If you're listening, you can't see it.
Propel not sponsored.
Yeah. I love Propel water, black cherry specifically. This bottle of water is your favorite hunting spot. And at the beginning of the year, it looks clear as a bell, just like this.
Yeah.
But every time you go out there, you take food coloring, which is your odor, and you just take a little bitty drop and you drop it in there.
Oop.
And all of a sudden, and then the next time, drop a little bit more and drop a little more. You're scouting during the summer, setting trail cams, dropping a little more.
Yeah.
You haven't even hunted yet. Now you're hunting, drop a little more, drop a little more, drop. All of a sudden, it's not clear anymore.
Yeah.
It looks like Kool-Aid.
Yep.
We start to inevitably put pressure on the spots that we hunt. We start to dilute it. You follow me? Just because, again, we just spend time out there and we go in and out, but a lot of times the odor stays behind. How many times, heck, even this last spring, turkey hunting, we go in there, we've hunted we had hunted near some of where the cams were. Hunt near where a cam was, put up a ground blind. The next evening or that evening, the next day, guess what's standing right in front of that spot? Deer.
Yeah.
Smelling all on the ground.
Yeah.
We're long gone, but our odor is left behind.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's where an Ozonics can become so valuable,
Yeah.
not only in the stand, but in the field in general.
Yeah.
You know, the other thing I would say too is what I get a lot of times when it comes to that whole using ozone in Western states is, yeah, but man, like I'm going on a backpacking trip. I can't afford to bring 5 batteries. Like I'm not going to be able to run it all the time. You talk about this dam idea and blocking the dam, and if blocking the water, if you lift it up, what difference does it make? I understand what you're saying. But the other thing that I would say to that, and the caveat is that if you are in that situation where battery is an issue, you can't charge batteries, you're backpacking, you're sleeping in a tent, you're sleeping on the ground. I always say in that situation, it's all about quality rather than quantity.
Yeah.
So let's say that you're elk hunting and it's, the first morning of elk hunting and you're just walking away from camp and you're walking up the mountain and you're there for 5 or 7 days. I wouldn't run my Ozonics every single second. But all of a sudden, when he starts to bugle and we're going to start making a move and we're getting in there closer where we've got on his level, now we're trying to move in, we're going up or down, and we're starting to really close that distance, then I would crank my Ozonics on.
Right.
And if it does or doesn't work out, as soon as that happens, shut it back off again.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
That's, again, it's all about quality. Would I still try to bring a couple batteries? Yes.
Yeah, without a doubt.
But an XL battery, if like an XL battery, an Ozonics HR500 is 8 hours runtime.
Yeah.
You bring two XL batteries, you can stretch 16 hours quite a long ways.
Yeah.
If it really comes down to those close proximity encounters with an elk, with a black bear, just run it when you really, really need it.
Or even too, just be smart of what mode you're in too. Maybe if you think, maybe you could drop it in the standard mode or something and just, conserve battery that way.
Yeah, I'd be careful. I'd be careful in an open air environment about standard mode. I mean, you can if you have to.
Yeah.
Standard mode on an HR500 is still a ton. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The biggest thing I would be careful of is try to stay away from like hyper boost mode.
Yeah.
If you're being cognizant about your life. Because
that's
if you're
exactly
looking
what I
at
was
8
saying,
hours,
yeah.
8 hours on boost, you're only at 6 hours on hyper boost.
Yeah, that's exactly what
So just be a little bit more careful of that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But again, I think that it's funny how Ozonics in some ways has been very much adopted in Western states, kind of in a niche group of guys, right?
Yeah.
But I guess that's the nice way of saying there are a lot of people that just don't believe in it.
Yeah.
They don't have it. They don't think that's necessary. They don't really see the value.
Yeah.
But man, I tell you what, I was 1,000% that guy.
Yeah.
And it was crazy because before Scott came elk hunting, we saw all these clients come through. Dude, I'll never forget. There was a guy one time, I couldn't find him in the morning. We're gonna get out, and I was like, where is he? He was out in the yard smoking his clothes over a fire before we went out hunting, and that's just what he did.
Yeah,
that was what he believed in. I'm like, wow. I guess you see something new every day.
Yeah,
and you saw all these people come with all these different ways of doing it. You know what I mean? And so, but for me, when I really saw Ozonics work, like I said, I was in Southern Colorado, and it just completely changed the game.
Yeah.
My job as a guide wasn't about success. It was about opportunity.
Yeah.
My job was to try to help the client get an opportunity. And for me, Ozonics very quickly showed me that it was going to help get my clients more opportunity.
Yeah.
Because we could get closer to animals. We get closer on the downwind side or get on the downwind side.
Yeah.
Where before, when they got past that line, they got on the downwind side, it was over.
Yeah.
So like I said, if you're listening to this and you're going on a elk hunt of a lifetime, no different than the Midwest. All these guys spend all this money. They come to Iowa to hunt. They get a deer on the downwind side. It wins them.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You're driving out to Idaho. You're driving out to Colorado, out to Montana. You're spending the money. Man, the reality is they're going to circle.
Yeah.
And this can help you with that.
Yeah.
It's going to give you a very clear and inherent advantage you don't have right now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think too, people around here even get hung up in the not hunt off the ground, yada yada yada.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, but dude, that's still it almost feels like that's even more of a place to use it. Your eye level with them, ear level with them,
nose level with them.
Nose level with them. It's like, man, that's a spot too where I think you could really have good success with it, or at least really help you out because you're already so much closer to the animal that you're hunting. So like any opportunity you can, or any opportunity you have to make something go better, I mean, you got to do it.
Well, I don't know why I always remember this, but I've told this story before. I went to Iowa State University. That's where I got my degree. And you don't really remember much of what you learned in college, which is kind of sad. I heard somebody the other day say that a diploma is just a receipt. And I was like, oh, that's kind of sad. It's kind of true. But interestingly, I sat in this, some sort of biology class. And the first day, the professor stood in front of class, getting everybody's attention, said his name was da-da-da-da, whatever. And he said, hey, we're going to try something here. I've got this perfume, and I'm going to spray it 5 times. And I want everyone in the room to raise their hand once you could start to smell it. Well, it was one of those rooms that was like a big room, right? With 150
stadium seating.
Yeah, 150 people like in this kind of narrow hall. Mm-hmm. So he sprays it. He just stands there. Well, within like 5 seconds, front row raises their hand. A couple, 30 seconds later, the next row. And over the next 5-10 minutes, he just stood there. And everybody started to raise their hand. And I was about halfway up. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, yep, I raised my hand. And it got all the way to the top. Everybody had their hands raised. And he said, can anybody explain that to me from a chemistry perspective, biological perspective? What does that mean? Like, explain it to me. Let's talk about this. And somebody, of course, like smart Alex, like, that smells terrible. Like, ha, ha, ha. Like, no, seriously. He goes, okay, first lesson. He goes, all things go from high concentration to low concentration. That cologne and perfume, whatever you want to call it, came out of that bottle in high concentration. But from a molecular level, it wanted to spread out.
Yeah.
Right? It just wanted to spread out and spread out and spread out. And it kept spreading and spreading and spreading. went from that high concentration to low concentration. It is no different when we're sitting in a tree stand.
Yeah.
It's even more no different when you're sitting on the ground.
Yeah.
To your point, you are on their level.
Yeah.
Right? You're even closer to them.
Yeah.
The concentration that they're going to catch a whiff of is even greater. They're not sitting in the back row. They're not sitting in the middle. They're sitting in the front row.
Yeah, exactly.
You follow me?
Yep.
And so to your point, there are so many people that use it in a tree stand. They use it in a ground biome, but then they maybe leave it if they were going to just be sitting up against a tree or sitting against a fence line. Man, I'd still try to figure out a way to jimmy that thing up there.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So just don't take that for granted. I think the moral of the story in whatever type of hunting you're doing, whether it's Western hunting or Midwest hunting, is figure out a way to run it all the time.
Yeah.
As often as you can, battery life permitting, you know what I mean? Unless you're on a Western hunt where you just don't have charging ability, then go for quality rather than quantity.
Yeah.
But figure out a way to run it all the time.
Yeah.
More ozone is going to eliminate more odor. We always talk about time and concentration. The more time it's out there, the more concentration we're getting out there, the more ozone, the more odor we're eliminating.
Yep, exactly. I think another thing we could talk about too is bear hunting.
Yeah.
Hunting over bait, something like that. I mean, that's a situation where where the animal's going to be coming into. And if they're in there and that wind switches, starts going right to that bait, well.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, like I said, I had an opportunity in my early 20s. I was bound and determined I wanted to go on a black bear hunt. This is before I ever had an opportunity to guide. It was kind of funny looking back on now, that whole trip had a real profound impact on my life. It was a real turning point, which is just kind of bizarre. But it was a baited black bear hunt in Northwest Ontario. Border Country Outfitters, if you're looking for a good black bear hunt, they're still out there. Steve Torreseva was his name. And Cecil Ogden, which I'm sure Cecil's probably long gone by now. But it was a baited black bear hunt. And so they had us in tree stands, and they explained, and I saw it and experienced it, said, yeah, a lot of times these younger, smaller bears will just come marching right in. They won't give two diddlies. They'll just come right into the bait. It's usually a good indicator if it's not a super big bear. They're going to just march right in.
Yeah.
Bigger black bears, that's not the way it works.
Right.
Bigger black bears, they're going to come in, and guess what they're going to do? They are going to circle to the one side. I saw black bears on that trip. I've seen black bears when I got in Colorado. We would hunt over gut piles gut piles or just like a carcass pile, right?
Yeah.
Like you shoot an elk and then we would go back in there in the state of Colorado. You could legally go and hunt back over that carcass pile.
Mm-hmm.
Those big black bears, man, they come in and they'll walk all the way around that bait.
Yep.
Maybe multiple times. They are going to smell everything that's going on there.
Right.
And a lot of times they'll just walk right back off. They don't like something. See you later. I mean, they are the man out there.
Yeah.
What they'd have to be afraid of, well, instinctively, obviously us.
Yeah.
But yeah, they just walk right off. And so that's where, if you are doing a baited black bear hunt, again, that's where it can become such a valuable tool to help eliminate your odor on that downwind side.
Yeah.
To help you get that shot.
Right.
Like you said, this was way before my Ozonics days. I had black bears that came in on that hunt and circled on the downwind side and were Oscar Mike. They were Gandhi. When I was in Colorado, we would use the Ozonics on black bears specifically for that reason.
Yeah.
The other thing that I would say is look at Randy, our buddy Randy Stoppenhagen from Idaho. They do a lot of spring black bear hunting.
Right.
There's a lot of spring black bear hunting all across the United States and throughout Canada. Mm-hmm. Some spring black bear hunting. A lot of guys hunt over bait, but then a lot of guys spot and stalk black bears, right?
Yeah.
Those black bears, when they come out of their dens in the spring, they got one thing on their mind. I'm hungry.
Yeah.
They haven't eaten in how many months, right?
Yep.
They are hungry. They get up on those high meadows and they find that fresh grass and those shoots and they just plow it down like a grazing cow.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yep.
Berries, whatever they can get their hands on, they're going to eat it. And so, but inevitably, when they're distracted trying to eat and hoof around and scrape around and do what they do, man, that nose is still doing its thing. And like we talked about earlier, whether that's that thermal moving up and down or just that wind switching, man, Western states, that's one thing you can 100% count on is the wind is not, you just can't count on the wind.
Right.
It's just going to swirl. It's going to switch. You feel that wind on the back of your neck one time. And again, bow hunting specifically is a sport of close. Be great if you could shoot a bow 200 yards, but that's not the way it works.
Right.
Even 100 yards doesn't usually how it works. It's a 50 and under, a 40 and under, 30, 20, 10 and under.
Yeah.
You got to get close. And when you get that close, man, any little skiff or switch of wind and that black bear, and he'll be Gandhi.
Yeah.
So you just have to be very, very careful. And that's where an Ozonics can be such a valuable tool. And again, like we talked about, if you're sitting up in a stand, whether you're hunting over a water hole, like I said, bears got to drink like everything else does, or you're hunting over bait, they're going to circle.
Yeah. Yep.
You know?
Exactly.
Yep. And they've got, and I'll tell you what, that's the other thing about bears too, man. They got a heck of a sniffer.
Yeah.
I mean, they really do.
Yeah.
You know, you think whitetails have got a good nose. Black bears' noses are just ridiculous.
Yeah.
They don't have the greatest of eyesight. I mean, they're not blind, but they don't have the greatest of eyesight. But where they miss out on their eyesight, they make up for it on their nose. They've got a nose on them. They really, really do.
Yeah, exactly.
The other thing that's very similar to a black bear, I'm going to interrupt you there.
No, you're good.
Which, again, had an opportunity to hunt both these types of things is pigs.
Yeah.
You know, we've been real fortunate, knock on wood. We don't have a pig problem in the Midwest, but man, you get pretty much south of, Missouri,
Yeah.
and it's Arkansas, Texas, all through the South, Florida. There's a lot of pigs.
Oh man, it's unreal.
Oh yeah, dude, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And like you said, if we had Scott and Buddy here, they would tell us stories for days.
Yeah.
I've had opportunities to hunt pigs a few different times in Texas,
Yeah.
Georgia, Florida. Man, those big boars, they don't mess around.
No.
Yeah, same thing like black bears. The small, stupid ones will come right in.
Yes.
They're like, I'm hungry. Heard the feeder go off. They just walk right in. Not those big ones, where all of a sudden all the little pigs scurry off and it gets real quiet. I wonder why.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden you just don't see or hear anything for 45 minutes to an hour.
Yeah, exactly.
Those big boars, man. And those big sows too, they don't mess around.
Yeah.
Yep. They will circle.
Yeah, we saw that firsthand last summer in Texas when we were hunting Nilgai. I mean, there was just pigs everywhere.
Yeah.
And man, they were skittish. Any little thing, bird flying over them, they go crazy for a little bit. And then,
I'll tell you what, man, I've heard a lot of people, and like I said, when I worked in Southern Colorado, one of the guys that was there was from Texas, ran a whitetail outfitting business in Texas for a lot of years, whitetails and pigs and everything else. And he's like, man, here's the deal, man. You kill Texas whitetails, you kill Texas pigs, you can kill anything.
yeah,
He's like, they are skitty critters.
yeah,
They just really are.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't mess around.
yep,
And they don't.
yep,
They really, really don't.
right,
Yep. It's really, really something. And again, the other thing I would say about that too is the other thing I would say, we talk about pig hunting or we talk about the southern half of the United States. Man, I'll never forget the first time we went to the Alabama World Deer Expo in Birmingham, Alabama. That was the first time I've been to really the southern states and had an opportunity to talk to whitetail hunters.
yep,
The one thing that you hear them say, and we talked about earlier about Western hunting, is in the South, it's hot, baby.
yeah,
It is hot. Sweating, getting sweated up, that's just a part of the deal.
yeah,
Scent control is a non-negotiable thing.
yep,
Ozonics in the South is a non-negotiable thing.
yeah,
Because guess what? You could do everything under the sun. Talk about nilgai hunting.
Oh my God.
It was like 4 a.m. and it was like 102 degrees the way it sounded.
I've never sweated so much getting set up camera wise in the dark.
Yeah, you're literally, it's never good when you're saying that you could like see the sweat like dripping off your elbows.
It was unreal.
Dude, I did a coos deer hunt years ago in Arizona in August. Gosh. Oh, dude, you're just sitting there and it's just dripping off of you.
Yeah.
You sweat. I don't care if you're
unreal.
in Texas, if you're in Arizona, if you're in Georgia, if you're in Florida, the Carolinas, you're gonna sweat.
Yeah, you can't get away from it.
You can't. It's like a weighted blanket. You know what I mean?
Yeah, seriously.
If it's on you, it's on you. You definitely know it.
Yeah.
And it's just hot there.
Yeah.
They just get such hot weather. I mean, in the springtime is kind of the beautiful time of the year, right? Where it's like, it's just beautiful. It's 60s, 70s. Man, you get past May and 60s or 70s, that's out the window.
Yeah.
90, 100,
Yeah.
humidity that you can cut with a knife. It's just hot. It's just hot.
It is.
It's just hot.
Yeah.
And again, If you're sweating, obviously you're emitting odor.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to get in front of that.
Right.
You know, I had a guy one time walk up and show. He's like, he was from the South, and he's like, he goes, sprays. He goes, yeah, I use sprays. And then he goes, and then I just sweat them right off, you know? And I'm like, yeah, I guess I never thought about that way. You know, and it does. You know, it's like, oh yeah, man. He's like, yeah, you go out in summer, and he's like, yeah, it's just like, you're just constantly sweaty.
Yeah.
And it's just a part of what they do.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
All right, so we've talked about, out west hunting on the ground, spot and stock, hunting over bait. I think another thing we should kind of touch on is hunting out of a blind.
Yeah.
I think, obviously, I think more people know that they can use the Ozonics in there, but I think there's still probably some people. I know I've been asked about it at the show, just when you were out doing something or talking to another person. I've had people ask me about using it in a blind.
Yep.
So if you could go over how to use it, how it works in there.
Yep.
Best practices for it, I guess you could say.
Yep. Yeah, like I said, thus far as we've been talking, we've been really concentrating on, like I said, kind of everything but whitetails.
Yeah.
Everything we're describing is really translate to whitetails too.
Yeah.
You know, and I think, like you said, I think there's a lot of misconceptions about in a ground blind.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing that I hear so often is that guys sit in a ground blind and they just put it above their head like they would in a tree stand.
Yeah.
The most important thing to remember in a ground blind, whether this is, again, whitetail specifically or pigs or out west or bears or whatever, doesn't really matter what it is.
Yeah.
We're not trying to treat the air in the blind. We're trying to treat the air leaving the blind.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing. We're not trying to treat the air in the blind. We're trying to treat the air leaving the blind. The air that's leaving the blind is what's getting to the animal. Really think about that.
Yep.
That's where a lot of people, the light bulb goes, like, oh, yeah, man, I've been doing it wrong this whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Again, that's part of it. But the other thing is we're trying to treat the air leaving the blind. Think about the blind or a tree stand like variables.
Yeah.
In an open air environment, in a tree stand, we've got a lot of variables. Right? It's just open. Everything's open.
Yeah.
In a ground blind, we have less variables. We have walls. We have a floor. We have a ceiling. In all reality, in a blind, you can really start to bottleneck where your odor is going out of that blind.
Exactly.
So again, not the air in the blind, the air leaving the blind. It's a closed air environment. We can bottleneck. We can control. Now we need to try to create airflow within the blind.
Yeah.
So with that said, I always say, try not to silhouette yourself, right? Be very, very careful of that. But as you're even listening to this, let's just say whatever way you're facing, that's looking out the blind and the wind's in your face, which is generally what a lot of guys are trying to do. Sit in the right stand, right ground blind on the right day on the right wind, and wind's in your face.
Yep.
With that said, you would want to have the Ozonics set up behind you, pointed out the back window.
Yeah.
You're letting the air in over here and then try to open up a window on the backside. That's where we're bottlenecking and that odor is going out.
Yeah.
If you closed up a blind all the way and you puffed your wind indicator, it's going out somewhere, but it's not, that wind indicator isn't going to really know where to go. If I have the window open on the front and I open a window on the back and I puff that wind indicator, it's going to go whoof,
right out
that back window.
Yep.
Set that Ozonics above the window in that downward direction so the ozone is going out of the blind.
Yeah.
If you have an Ozonics set up the right way in a ground blind or in a tree stand, you shouldn't be smelling it.
Yeah.
We're not worried about you. We're worried about the odor coming off you. That's what's getting to the deer. That's what's getting to the pig or the bear or the elk or whatever.
Yep.
That's what we're trying to focus on. So just really try to do that. The other thing that I get asked a lot when it comes to the blind thing is, well, listen, man, I keep my blind all the way shut up. I keep every window closed. I have little sliding windows, like 360 blinds have a great window system that are on these little weighted pulleys.
Yep.
You can open them like whisper quiet. A lot of the blinds are awesome now you can open them, flap them open or pull them open, whatever. Guys like, man, I just keep all my windows shut real tight. Like, what do I do in that situation? I understand where you're coming from. I would suggest in that situation, get that Ozonics out the window or get it on the outside of the blind.
Mount it to the outside.
Mount it to the outside. If you're setting it up normally, you're creating that airflow. You want it on standard mode. You don't need all that extra ozone. If you're setting it up outside the blind, you could put it on boost or hyper boost if you wanted to. The disadvantage to that is again, if you have the Ozonics in the blind and the wind switches, you can move the Ozonics and adjust. If you have it outside the blind, it's just, you're compromising certain situations where if you have to reach out and grab it or maybe adjust it, it's not great to be jumping in and out and all that movement. So be cognizant of that. But that's what I tell people is if you're really, really dead set on keeping your blind all the way shut up, then just figure out where that downwind side, that prevailing wind for the day,
Yeah.
and have it set up outside the blind in that prevailing wind.
Yep. Exactly.
You know, that's the other option.
Yep.
I would not suggest, having the blind all buttoned up and running it on the inside.
Right.
Again, we're not treating the area in the blind. We're trying to treat the area leaving the blind.
Yep.
So the other thing that I would say too is again, we focus so much of this on everything but whitetails.
Mm-hmm.
But again, if you're new to this or if you're an avid user, don't overlook obviously using it on whitetails.
Yeah.
Right. And again, the majority of the people are using it in a tree stand. So I think across the board, you really need to understand kind of the fundamentals of ozone and then really understand the setup. It's all about setup. It's all about setup. I always talk about if you went and bought a new bow and you try to shoot it upside down, good luck, right? Think about Ozonics like a Ferrari. If you don't know how to shift the gears, like you can grind them and find them, but you're not going to go near as fast as you could.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what it boils down to.
Yep.
And so, again, ozone is a very unstable molecule. We're trying to manipulate that instability. It doesn't want to be ozone. You follow me? We're not trying to treat you. We're trying to treat the odor coming off of you. That's what's getting the deer. Ozone is heavier than the air, so it's naturally going to fall, right? It's going to go from high concentration to low concentration. You follow me?
Yep.
From a molecular level, it's very unstable. We're trying to manipulate that instability, create a situation where that ozone comes in contact with your odor. It oxidizes, it stabilizes, it's changing the molecular structure.
Yeah.
You follow me? If your odor is a password, and the password's the word human, they know the password. Deer know the password. When they smell human, they run. If we take off the H and we take off the M, when that ozone comes in contact with it, now it's not the word human anymore. It's the word UMA.
Yep.
They don't know what that means.
Yep.
We're changing the molecular structure. We're changing that password. But again, in a tree stand, an open air environment, it's all about setup. So we really talk about three things: height, direction, angle.
Yeah.
Height, we always talk about 8 to 12 inches above your head from the position that you hunt from. So I stand the majority of the time.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that I don't sit, but from the position that I hunt from, I'm standing.
Yeah.
Right? Some guys like to sit. They feel more comfortable. They feel more stable, whatever it might be. They don't like heights. They'd rather just feel more comfortable sitting down. Then set it up accordingly.
Right.
Direction, number 2, always pointing in the downward direction. So again, the downwind side. So as you're listening to this, if the wind's in your face, the downwind side's behind you. Okay, so always point in the downward direction. In that situation, if the wind's in your face, you want to mount it on the side of the tree and point it behind you.
Yep.
There's a lot of people that make that mistake. Part of that has been something that we've tried to have to really just try to more effectively communicate with the user, because they see it on our website, they see it in a magazine where it's above our guy's head. That's where it looks best. It's kind of hard to do an Ozonics advertisement where you don't see the unit mounted behind the tree.
Yeah, exactly.
So they see that and they're like, oh, I just mount it like that.
Yeah.
Oh, not exactly.
Yeah.
And then 3, angle. We always talk about a 30-degree angle down. If it's more than a 15-mile-an-hour wind, we want to take it vertically straight down.
Yep.
In essence, on a windier day, we're trying to pour that ozone into your downwind side faster.
Right.
So height, direction, angle.
Yeah.
And again, whitetails are no different. I mean, the reality is when it comes to the fall, we start rattling, we start grunting, we start trying to communicate and affect the behavior of those whitetails. They're going to come in, they're going to circle.
Yep.
They walk in on a field, they're going to circle on the downwind side.
Yep.
It's just unbelievable. I mean, that's just when they're on their feet.
Right.
I think whether it's in whatever type of game you're hunting, whether it's elk or mule deer or whitetails, they figure out when they actually bed down, they put themselves in a compromising position.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? It's not like there's not other predators out there, bobcats, coyotes, mountain lions, all this stuff that's going to try to get after them. They position themselves in a very particular way so they can see on the downwind or see on the upwind and smell on the downwind.
Yeah.
Do you follow me?
Exactly.
And so it's just they don't do that by chance. Like they do that instinctively
Right.
to survive.
Yep.
And so again, that's where an ozonics can become so valuable. The reality is that, we may go in and out, but our odor is left behind.
Yeah.
And that's where it can become a powerful tool. So whether it's a tree stand or ground blind, and like we talked about earlier, using the kinetic pack, using the ozonics on the way in and out.
Yeah.
I think that seems to be, for some reason, that's just like that's the next step or the next level that you can go up, that you can really take it a step above.
Exactly.
Where I think a lot of guys don't do that. They go, man, I never thought about that. I use it in my tree stand religiously. I swear by it.
Yeah.
But then I unintentionally emit odor all the way in and all the way out.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, man, you 100% do.
Yep.
You're like, I'm really missing the boat. It's not a coincidence that sometimes you walk in a real tricky way and you don't see anything that day. Well, you were emitting odor into your spot the whole way in.
Right.
And sometimes that's how we have to hunt, right? Like one of the big differences between whitetail hunting in the Midwest and Western hunting is Western hunting is bigger. You know, like you and I hunt spots around here, 40 acres, 80 acres, 20 acres, small little pieces.
Yeah.
There it's miles and miles of country. You follow me?
Yep.
100,000 acres, 50,000 acres. It's huge tracts of land.
Yeah.
And so we just have to be so much more careful about how we pressure and how we interact with that environment.
Right.
So
Yep.
something to think about.
Yep.
I'll tell you what, the other thing to mention too that we haven't touched on that I think is something that is crazy overlooked is predator hunting. Oh my goodness, I think that's overlooked. I've like I said, when I was out west, we did a lot of predator hunting for red fox, swift fox, gray fox, coyotes in Colorado, Texas, Midwestern states, Pennsylvania, red fox in Pennsylvania, coyotes in Georgia, Florida, California, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas. Predator hunting, man. That is just, I mean, this day and age with e-calls especially, or just mouth calling. I mean, geez, even I had an opportunity to go on black bear hunts in British Columbia and mouth call black bears, trying to get them to come in on a like a rabbit in distress, and they circle on the downwind side.
Yeah, exactly.
All predators, you just set up knowing that this is my downwind side.
Yeah.
That's just how it is.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's not a question. It's just fact.
Yeah.
They are going to circle on the downwind side. That's where they're going to come from.
Yep.
You know, they're going to barrel in to get on the downwind side if they come in from a different side.
Right.
You know, that's just the way it is. You know, and again, I think it comes down to, for a lot of people, I think setup becomes kind of the block. Heck, what we used to do, and I do this with my buddy Zach Workman, and I say, I think next year I'm going to try to do this. I've red fox hunted with him a lot when I've been at the show. These last couple of years have been so warm, but it sounded like they still pounded them. But we would just set up tripods above us, almost like a tree, and we would set up the Ozonics and point it in the downward direction and just kind of tuck up in between the tripod.
Yeah.
Or if you're sitting on a fence line, you're sitting up against a tree, just bring your mounting system, mount it.
Yeah.
I know it's another step, but man, if you can get away with it on the downwind side, that really, really, really can change things for you. I mean, that can really change the game.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's just, you know, I think that's just something that is way, way overlooked.
Right.
And I think the guys that are really starting to figure that out, a lot of them don't want to tell anybody because they're having great success with it.
Yeah.
You know, they want to kind of keep it to themselves, but predator hunting and using your Ozonics, that can be an absolute game changer.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. I think that's something that just, for whatever reason, and I even talk to guys at the shows and they're like, man, dude, I never even thought of that.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, dude, absolutely. I mean, they live and die by their nose as much as anybody does.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Well, like I said, moral of the story is if you're only using your Ozonics for whitetails, I think you're doing yourself a disservice.
Yeah.
If you're new to the ozone game, and whether you live in Colorado or you're from Florida or Georgia or Montana or California or Arizona, wherever you're from, Texas, if you're hunting, unless it's turkeys. I'll tell you what, I've always joked, if turkeys had a nose, I don't think anybody'd kill them.
Yeah.
With their eyesight, if they could smell, holy cow.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you said, if you're hunting any type of big game animal, you're hunting whitetails anywhere across the United States, you're hunting elk and big game in the Western states, Ozonics can help you.
Yeah.
It can help you. It can help you when you get animals on the downwind side.
Yeah,
Because the reality is right now when you get animals on the downwind side without Ozonics, there's a pretty good chance you're getting winded.
Yep.
And with that Ozonics, you're going to have a fighting chance.
Yeah.
So go to ozonicshunting.com. Check it out.
Yeah.
Hey, I think we wrap it up.
Yep.
That's a good one.
It is a good one.
Another Ozonics Killerwinds podcast in the book. I'm Cole Tanner.
I'm Nick Simon.
I don't think we did introductions at the beginning.
We didn't.
There you go. If you didn't know who we were,
Now
you
you
just
know.
figured it out. Congratulations. Stay classy.
See you next week.
Hey, don't get in an accident. Be careful.